Okay, welcome to the next video. We've currently worked on the button next. We've worked on the button previous, and now we're working on the button add. So I would advise you that every step that you do, you check to make sure that you're on the right path. So that's what we currently have at the moment. So what I actually want to do now is I would like to actually work on the button. Next button I want to work on, I've worked on the button next, worked on the button previous. I want to work on the button update. So with the button update, let's just have a look at this here. And the button update is quite similar to the button add because we're going to check to make sure, because the button add is that if there's no ID, then add a new one. But if there's an ID, it means that the person is trying to update it. So when they click on the button update, we want to use the ID to now go and update what we need to update. So that's where the button update comes into play. So the button update and the button add are very, very, very similar. It's very, very similar in the sense that the only change in that case is that we are changing if the ID is empty to rather if the ID is not empty. If the ID is not empty, because that means that the ID exists, there's an ID exists in that text view. And then what we want to do is, rather than passing in now, we're going to actually pass in the ID from the text view, because that is what we're going to use to go into the table to update it by. So if I pass in, let's check to make sure where is the ID for the person. So we have string.id here. So we actually want to use that to be the one to, well, work with. Let me actually check our new events. So let's have a look at it. I think because I'm using a string, required type is a string. Okay, so the required type is actually a string. So let me go to my events.java. I want to see how I created it. Oh, I made it into an integer rather. I made it into an integer, which is fine, which is completely fine. We just now need to have a look at it. And rather than passing in an integer, okay, cool. Let's pass in the ints, because this txt.getString.toString, we just want to pass in an ID. Just like that. So when we pass in the ID just like that, now we want to change that into db update events. And then if we go to our db update events, let's go and check in our db connect update events, and let's see what we were passing in. Okay, in our db.update events, just want to make sure that before it submits in there, I know that I am actually passing in an ID, because we're using an ID to work with it. Okay, this is completely fine. When we test it, we'll know where we are. Okay, beautiful. So this is what we have currently with our button update.setOnClickListener. Now, next thing we want to do is want to create a button delete. So when the person clicks on the delete, we want to use the ID that's currently on to actually go into the database and delete it. So button delete. So these are all, it's kind of like once we've written a code for one, we can cut this code shorter and do it differently. So what we have here is, again, we want to check to make sure things are empty, etc., etc. But in this case, if there is no ID, the person can't, we shouldn't let the person, be able to delete it if it has nothing. So if the ID is not empty, if the ID is empty, it was going to say error. You cannot delete something that's not there, etc., etc. I'll just put error for now. But if the ID is not empty, we're going to pass in that ID in here. And then all we're going to have to do is we are going to do db.delete events and then pass in the E1 again. Now, next thing I want to do is, remember when we created our DB Connect, we actually returned an end result if it was true or false. Maybe we want to send a message to the user so that the user understands that, oh, so the person has successfully deleted whatever they want to do. So what we can actually do is, once the DB update is run, we can just, let's say, create a Boolean result, because obviously it's going to return a true or false, which is going to store in the Boolean. And we're going to do if result means that it's true. We want to display that, you know, it's successfully done what it needs to do. So, and I'll keep it success for now. And then I will do the same thing for, this is the delete update. I'll do the same thing for the delete. So delete, that's same thing. Okay, brilliant. So we've done our button, we've done all our buttons. Now the next thing is, if a user wants to add a new item, obviously we want to make sure that they can clear whatever field is in there. So we're going to work on the button clear. So on the button clear, what we want to work on the button clear for is, we want to create a method which will clear all the data. So if the user, let's say, wants to add a new event, but they're currently viewing something, we want to clear all that field and set the txt text view to empty, so that it means that the user can now add. So we want to create a method called public void load data, not load data, public void clear data. So if we have a load data, we have a clear data. And all that will do is, all that's going to do is, we are just going to clear, we're going to set the text of the fields that we have currently to empty. Like I said, this code could be done easier, but I'm just doing it this way so that you'll be able to have an understanding of it, because this is a simple, this is us using it without using any list view, any recycler view. We're just using buttons and edit texts and text views. So we're going to set the text to nothing. 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 And that is going to what we're going to use for our clear data. So when the button is clear, it just clears everything. Everything now becomes empty again, which will be easier. Now, the next thing we need to do is we need to create a button. So let's say a person deletes the current thing that they're on. Obviously, we want to go back and start. We want to go back and start the list from the start again. So we want to do load update data. So let's say the person's on line number 9 and delete line number 9. What's going to happen? Our application might crash because there's nothing on number 9 anymore. So once the person deletes it, we want to go back to 0. So it starts again. So when that happens, we want to set the current position to 0. We want to the events list equals DB. We want to get that data all over again, and then we want to load the data again, and we're going to pass in the current position. So whenever you delete something, let's say you are looking at what's in line 9, and you delete line 9, we want you to go back to 0 so that you can view the list over and over and over again. And this is our code to load data, to delete data, to update data. And I want us to test it and see where we are currently. So what we've done is we've created buttons, and you can see that most of the code is the same. Okay, a method which does all these checks for us, and we can just use that method throughout. But for this purpose, because I don't want to confuse, we'll do that later as we continue to make the code shorter and shorter as we go along. Okay, so added variables does not support initialization. Okay, so let's start over and over again. Doesn't like the fact that I was restarting. I need to install it again because I've added variables that it doesn't like. So we'll just let Android Studio do its thing. And then when it's ready to load, Android Studio can load for us. But if you've got to this stage, we've made progress over and over. I've got a button there. No, actually, load flow is different. Okay. If button view all, actually button view all should go to a list view. So list view. So just wait for it to load. While it loads, okay, so this is how it looks now. Now, if you want to check, this is the application now. It was taking long to load, but it's loaded now. You can see here that I've successfully added to the database. If you want to check your database in Android Studio, if you go to App Inspection, you should see a database inspection there. If you click on there, you'll be able to see your events manager there. You'll be able to see the tables and how the tables works. So in this case, I've added something to it already. So let's say I want to go to the next one. I can't go to the next one because obviously there's nothing in there. So what I want to do here is I want to clear the data. Once I click clear, there's nothing set in this ID. So if I go to, let's say, next, it automatically loads up the next list on my list. So let's go to update. So if I want to update it, let's say Emmanuel James, and I click on update, it updates it. If I go to, okay, so the update here is having a bit of issue, but it should work because what I haven't done is I have that will be created and load update data. Now this load update data will load everything from the database again. At the moment in the list. So what we need to do is every time we make, let's say, an update, or every time we make a delete, an update, or etc., etc. So if we go to our button add, what I want to put here is once we add something to the database, we want to load that data again, load update data, and this is and gets what's actually entered into the database, or it will keep loading up what's actually in the list at the moment. It's still got the old data. So in our button.update, whenever we make an update to it, after it's made the update, if the result is successful, first you list from the database, the fresh successfully delete something, you want to get an old list in your application when somebody has made an update to it. So that's what it is. And restart activity, working events view, but for now you can actually create an events application which allows you to add an event, update it, and that's how it is. So let's do this. Emmanuel, let's try and see if this will do. So let's say we do an update. We want to see if the update works. Okay, so we would have a look at that soon.